Join us on the last bus home.
I don't think, if I were you, I wouldn't bother calling doctor out. Just wash your hands, bit of sanitizer, and it'll go away after a while.
Yeah, probably just overthinking things.
Because all doctor's going to do is just probably show his mates pictures, so...
Yeah, they're all quacks anyway.
Mm-hmm.
While I appreciate your medical advice, I don't really think that's the reason I'm here.
Well, no, this stuff's a bonus, and I feel that I've single-handedly kept you alive about 6 months longer than you deserve, so...
Well, I'd prefer something more paranormal, but...
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the other thing I wanted to discuss is it's an old one, and I believe we've had a shot at this before, but we never released it. And I think I'm thinking we should renew it, blow the dust off it, as it were, and see how it goes now.
Back in the days of episodes which should never, ever see the light of day.
Exactly, when we had quite a back catalogue before we ever did our first episode. So, what I've dragged out and dusted off is the classic Hairy Hands of Dartmoor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, I first came across this. God. There used to be a Saturday morning show, cartoon time and all that, called The Wide Awake Club, I think it was. And James Baker was a presenter on it, and he used to do a section called ESP. Every week he'd have a little 10-minute section and he'd cover something paranormal. And he did the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor, and it kind of stuck with me. And then,
on a kids show?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, he did the kid version of it. It's not like he went into any frightening... Well, he did, to be fair. He did go into frightening detail because it stuck with me. But I came across it in some books since, and I figured it's something we should do, and we did. And now we're going back to it.
Sweet, I'm all about that. I know with the... I'm going to be honest with you, I can't really remember the last episode. I know a little bit about the story, but this will be an interesting one.
So, before I get into it, what is your knowledge of the Hairy Hands of Dartmoor?
It's basic, mate. It happened in Dartmoor, and it's a paranormal entity that people were feeling, and it came across in the form of some big, hairy, pervy hands.
Yeah, you're not far off. In a nutshell, there's a stretch of road in Dartmoor between a little place called Post Bridge and another place called Two Bridges. It's just a B road, B3212, out on the moors. And same moors as the Beast of Dartmoor, which is a different story, but it's essentially a big cat story. And yeah, this like nightmarish B road, which is like pretty much one lane in places, and it's just in the middle of nowhere, badly lit, cambers all over the place. It's based there. Okay.
Do you think those moors are as grim as the Yorkshire moors?
The Dartmoor moors, or the moors of Dartmoor, or Bodmin, or those southwest moors can get pretty bleak. But the North Yorkshire moors, or any moors in Yorkshire, I think, for me, are a bit bleaker because the weather's bleaker up north.
Yeah, fairs.
But a moor is a moor, which vast. Because I don't think they're known for their trees. Really, it's just open land for miles, scrubland.
It's like if you bought a national park from Timu. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say. All the trees that look really big in the pictures, they come up to your knee.
Mm.
So yeah, moors can get pretty windy. They're quite inhospitable, and they get quite romanticised in Bronte books. They're not as cool as the Brontes make them sound. So anyway, Dartmoor it's basically the moorland around the River Dart. So I'm going to launch into the earliest story of the hairy hands that we have, and it's probably the best documented one as well. Okay, so since about 1910, people travelling the road between Postbridge and Two Bridges started reporting some pretty weird accidents. Drivers and cyclists kept saying the same thing, that their vehicle would suddenly be jerked or would swerve like something had grabbed the wheel or handlebars and yanked them off the road. Most of the time, they just ended up in a ditch, shaken but alive, and the story stayed kind of a local oddity. So, the weird things happen, and just the locals be like, "Oh, that road," I was gonna do an accent for you then, but I'm not gonna do that to you. So this one says earliest reports date back to 1910, and it seems nobody was hurt until the incident in 1921. Dr. E.H. Helby, the then medical officer for Dartmoor Prison, was driving down the B3212 on his motorbike and sidecar. The passengers in the sidecar are reported to be his two young daughters. However, other versions of the events say the young girls were the daughters of the prison governor. Helby was rushing to a medical emergency, so was driving considerably faster than he should have been. But as he raced along the road, Dr. Helby seemed to lose control of the bike. It seemed to the girls he was wresting the handlebars from an unseen force. And as he fought the entity, I say entity in finger quotes, Dr. Helby shouted for the girls to jump from the sidecar because something was wrong. More quotes. So the girls jumped to safety, but sadly, Dr. Helby wasn't so lucky. And he died when the malevolent force appeared to win the struggle. Concerning Captain M, the paper reported on him showing up injured at a friend's house, claiming, "It was not my fault," he said at last. "Believe it or not, something drove me off the road. A pair of hands covered mine. I felt them as plainly as I'd ever felt anything in my life. Large, muscular, hairy hands. I fought them for all I was worth, but they were too strong for me, and they forced the machine into the turf at the edge of the road. And I knew no more till I came to myself, lying a dozen feet away on my face on the turf." And it's only Captain M's account that referred to the hands being hairy. But as the story grew, this became a key feature. Now, up until this point, they hadn't been seen. It's always been as though a pair of hands were doing this.
Right.
And he said he felt hands on his hands. And he said they felt muscular and hairy. So, that's where the hairy part came in, which then automatically makes people start to think that they're being seen because,
Yeah.
you assume so when you say they're hairy.
Did it say they're unnormally big? Did it say they're big or just standard hands?
Well, they just said they felt like hands.
Right.
In Supernatural Dartmoor, a website, A man called Michael Williams shares a story he got from a journalist, author Rufus Endell. Endell said that one day, while he was driving near Postbridge, a pair of hands gripped the driving wheel and he had to fight for control. He managed to keep the car on the road, and the hands vanished just as suddenly as they'd appeared. So now we're starting to see hands. Or, when he says as suddenly as they appeared and vanished, the feeling stopped. It's not really clear, but the word in there does kind of insinuate that he's seen the hands this time. And he made Williams promise not to publish the story until after he'd died, because he didn't want people laughing at him. I mean, he could have just posted it anonymously, but picture this. It's 1925, a freezing winter night on Dartmoor. The sky's clear, the air's sharp, and frost is already creeping across the grass at the side of the road. You and your partner are bundled up in heavy coats and thick gloves, rattling along the B3212 after visiting friends in Morton Hampstead. The old turnpike, Carter's Road, as people used to call it, isn't exactly welcoming at the best of times. Off to your left, the moon is just lifting over the arched Tor. Tor being a rocky hill, I'll just point out. So if you get a very large hill, usually peaked, and they're very rocky, you would generally call it a Tor. Tor. So there you go. Throwing a pale yellow glow across the moor. Between that and your dim headlights, you suddenly catch a pair of fiery eyes shining right in the middle of the road. And as you get closer, a hunched brown shape appears, frozen to the spot. Those red eyes staring straight through you. Your partner screams, you slam on the brakes, and the tyres skid across the icy surface. Time stretches out as the car slides sideways, bumping along until it finally stops short of the creature. Your heart's hammering, but when you look again, it's just a red deer, terrified and trembling in the headlights. Your partner can't decide whether to laugh or cry. The deer finally snaps out of it and bounds off towards Archerton Bog. The swish of frozen grass, the only sign that it was ever there. If it weren't so bitterly cold, you'd probably take off your gloves, light a cigarette to steady your nerves. But you've still got miles to go, so you push on. Up ahead, your headlights catch the little higher Cherrybrook Bridge. Knowing how icy the road is, you brake gently and line up your approach, giving the granite parapet a respectful amount of space. And then, out of nowhere, the car jerks violently to the left. You tighten your grip on the wheel, and that's when you see them, a pair of severed, hairy hands clamped around it. No matter how hard you fight, they drag the car towards the verge. There's a sickening jolt, and you leave the road, followed by the awful screech of willow branches scraping along the sides of your car. Eventually, everything shudders to a halt. Steam hisses up into the cold air, and then there's nothing but silence. Thick, stomach-turning silence. You look down, the hands are gone, vanished as suddenly as they appeared. Your partner is as pale as the moon hanging over the moor, and the smell of hot oil and burning rubber fills the air. Congratulations, you've just had a run-in with the Hands of Dartmoor.
I was going to ask if you think they're severed or detached or just on some like invisible big hairy body.
I'm leaning towards invisible. I think seeing them just takes away a bit of the fear, because big giant hairy hands. They probably just look like those fancy dress werewolf claws.
I'd say the entity, whatever it is, it's definitely demonic, because it's not like it's trying to ease itself into the picture, is it? With two hairy hands. It's sent to scare. Could be a shadow person who hit puberty hard.
But that I read actually came from, I think it was like a tourist page or pamphlet welcoming people to the area, which if I was visiting a new area, I don't think I'd appreciate. Well, I would, but I don't think everybody would.
It's cool how there's lots of stories, because that means something so specific like hairy hands, and for there to be quite a few, I say, eyewitness accounts.
Right, back in the early 1900s, people started reporting a string of strange accidents along the stretch of the B3212 between Postbridge and Two Bridges. Cyclists said the handlebars were suddenly yanked out of their grip, sending them straight into the ditch. Pony and traps were pushed off the road too. And before long, drivers of cars and motor coaches were having the same unnerving experiences. So it seems to go back. The legends go back a lot further, but the official reports was the first one where the captain. They were reported locally, but they hit the national news when the captain, M, talked about him. But it was purely what made it hit the national news and become bigger was the fact they were referred to as hairy. But it's only him who's ever referred to them as hairy, and it's only the accounts since then where I believe people might have just jumped on the wagon. Suddenly they started seeing them, But before that, they hadn't. There was always just the force pulling them off. I'd be interested to read anything further about the pony and traps, because something would have to grab the reins, or were the horses being pushed? Were the heads being forced to the side, or were they was the rein being yanked? I don't know. But yeah, a few months later, and this is a few months after the coach incident and the captain on his motorbike, a lady called Beatrice Chase, well known locally for her Dartmoor writing, sent a letter to the Western Morning News giving them her own theory. She suggested the accidents might be caused by you'll like this. Be caused by magnetic rocks on the moor.
Oh man, I knew.
Saying the unusual weather that year could have changed the magnetic currents. And according to her, the metal handlebars or steering wheels might act as conductors, giving riders a kind of electric shock that made them lose control. She even suggested someone should test the road from Merrypit Hill to Archerton. The authorities did send engineers out, but only to repair the road, not to check for magnetic fields.
Shame. Well, I totally buy that theory, but it's not giving the riders a shock. You see, the probably large amounts of iron ore in the moor is opening a rift between spirit realms, and it's allowing this hairy bastard to come out and get all handsy with the townfolk. You know what I'm saying?
But have you ever had an electric shock, or at least felt a current go through you?
Have I? Hell yeah.
Because it feels prickly, which I'm guessing could feel hairy.
Hot, prickly, buzzy. Definitely
on the skin, yeah. So
yeah,
it's not a far-fetched description saying it felt like hairy hands. And muscular, meaning like kind of stronger than yours, because getting electric shock, it's your muscles getting all monged up. So, I think it holds a bit of water. What I'm a bit fuzzy on is the the current jumping from rocks to cars. And
Yeah, I don't buy that wacky theory,
it's
mate.
it's that convenient little jump there that I'm struggling with. So, I'm going to drop a word on you here that actually no longer exists.
Bring it back.
So there's also a story from later the same year about a Sharabang. That's what
I've heard of a shower bang before.
Okay, let me clarify that with some spelling, because this isn't a Brazzers scene.
Ah, shit.
And for the record, Mum, I don't know what Brazzers is either. But it's spelled Charabanc. Pronounced Sharabang.
Sharabang. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an open top bus, I believe. Anyway, that same year, about a Sharabang full of tourists travelling along the B3212. Everything was going fine until the vehicle suddenly swerved across the road and climbed up a bank. Since seatbelts weren't a thing back then, and they're still not on buses, several passengers were thrown out, and one was badly hurt. You see, this version of it is a bit better, because I can't see how being thrown out your seat in a bus is going to hurt you that much. But being thrown out the top of a Sharabang might hurt, because you'll Sharabang your leg on a rock, a magnetic rock, and hurt it. So there you go. But yeah, it got thrown out, badly hurt, and afterwards the driver insisted that a pair of horrible, hairy hands had grabbed the wheel and forced him off the road. So now they've got a new dimension now. They're now horrible as well.
Horrible. Not manicured at all.
No, I'm guessing calloused.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe with like an old school sovereign ring. Do you know, like the yard man in the pub who's about to knock you out? And a few taps.
Just the guy that wears like a bicycle chain gold necklace.
Exactly. And he's got love and hat on his knuckles because he can afford the E.
Yeah. And a heart that says ma'am.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I get you. In September 1947, there was another tragic accident near Cherrybrook Bridge. A young couple from Exeter had spent the evening in Princetown, where the boyfriend had a couple of beers. Take note.
Did he know?
Nothing excessive, apparently, but enough for his girlfriend to ask him to take it slow on the ride home. She was in the sidecar and he was driving the motorbike. As they approached Cherrybrook Bridge, the bike suddenly picked up speed and started to wobble. She was thrown out onto the grass verge, while he shot forward and crashed straight into the bridge. Help arrived quickly, and he was rushed to Tavistock Hospital, but he died from a fractured skull. At the inquest, P.C. Tancock from Princetown said the couple had been perfectly sober when they left town. I don't know how he'd know that. And he explained that the bike hit the bridge at a speed after going into a wobble the young man couldn't correct. The verdict was accidental death. Whether it really was just an accident or something stranger, nudging the bike off course, we'll never know.
Sounds like a cover-up.
Sounds dodgy to this young man.
I reckon so.
So jump ahead to 1962. A visitor named Florence Warwick was driving along the same road and she pulled over to check her map, minding her own business, when she suddenly looked up and saw a pair of huge, hairy hands pressed against the windscreen. She later said, "I tried to scream but couldn't. I was frozen with fear. The hands vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving her shaken and completely terrified." And then we hear nothing until 2008.
Whoa, those hairy hands took a little vacay.
Maybe they went off and did other stuff. And
Maybe they sorted themselves out. The reports coming back in the 2000s, they came back with like painted nails and stuff.
Well, I would say between the years of 1962 and 2008, these hands just may have got work in the various versions of the Addams Family that we've been treated to.
Oh, of course.
So it might have been the same actor playing Thing in every version of the Addams Family that there is, from the old black and white TV show right up to the maybe even now the Wednesday TV show.
Just needed a side hustle. Just sat there one day having a chill, just like, how long can I keep trying to pay the rent by pushing couples off a bridge? I need to get in the acting game.
So, draw some stitches of him and on him, just crawl over people's shoulders. So anyway, in 2008, another motorist reported that he saw a huge pair of what looked like hairy paws grab his steering wheel in an attempt to force him off the road. To this present day, there are still reports of spectral hands grabbing the steering wheel or of an eerie, evil presence inside the car, which in some cases leads to erratic steering. In the summer of 1924, there was yet another strange incident. This time it happened to the mother of Devon folklorist Theo Brown, who was staying in a caravan only half a mile from the stretch of road where all the earlier troubles were happening. So this isn't a moving vehicle, this is just a caravan having a camp. Yeah, husband and wife having a camp. And that's all they were doing. So, and it was only half a mile from the B3212, where all the other stuff's been happening. So years later, Theo wrote a detailed account of what her mother experienced that night. According to her, she suddenly felt that something dangerous, seriously dangerous, was close by. She looked out through a small window and saw movement. As she focused on it, she realized it was the fingers and palm of a very large hand, covered in hair, hauling itself up towards a slightly open window. She instantly knew it wasn't human, and she was convinced it meant to harm her and her sleeping husband. And she also felt that no physical force, no punch, no weapon could make any difference against it. Acting on instinct, she made the sign of the cross and prayed hard for protection. Now, I'm not sure how a hard prayer differs from a prayer. She shouted it or did it through gritted teeth, but
yeah, it's where you really get into it. You really
right.
Yeah, you really, come on, Jesus!
You give yourself over to it.
Yeah,
fair enough. So what we say when people just pray normally, like in church, they don't really mean it.
Exactly. It's like, go eat a sandwich, guy. But if you really want to get into it,
if you're going to pray, then pray.
Holy Spirit shit.
Yeah, don't half-ass it. Whole-ass that prayer. Fair enough. So anyway, so instinctively, she made the sign of the cross and whole-assed a prayer for protection. Almost immediately, the hand sank out of sight and the sense of danger lifted. She said a prayer of thanks. I don't think she did it very hard, but she said she half-assed a prayer of thanks and eventually fell into a deep sleep. She and her husband stayed in the area for several more weeks without another encounter, though she admitted she never felt entirely comfortable near that spot again, and she certainly wouldn't have walked on the moor alone at night.
Why would you? Do you know what I mean? Don't be walking on the moors at night alone.
On your own after that, yeah. Another story came to Theo Brown in 1961 from a Mrs. E. Battiscombe. She said a young man had ridden into Princetown on his motorcycle to fetch something for his landlady. When he returned about an hour later, he was pale and shaken. He claimed that rough, hairy hands had grabbed his own on the handlebars and tried to throw him off the bike. No further details were recorded.
I think they seem to be getting seen a lot more now. It's like maybe similar to like Freddie K and even the Shadow People, where you kind of believe in them more, the more powerful they get. Seems to be a rule
Like
of
a
the spirit
sultan.
realm. Yeah, like the more you believe in them, the more you fear them, the more they can manifest themselves. That's a lesson for all our listeners out there. If you really want to give a middle finger up to the shadow realm, just try and relax. You know, if your cupboard doors start banging or you see a shadowy figure at the bottom of your bed, just be like, do you know what? Fuck it, I'm chill, and they'll eventually go away. That's how it works.
Fast forward several decades into the early 2000s, and it seems the hairy hands weren't done causing trouble. In a story shared with author Nick Redfern, now Nick Redfern, he shows up in a lot of TV shows about cryptids, and he's like a resident expert on like Bigfoot shows and stuff like that. I think he's got like the Brummie accent and bald
It's a
hair.
Bigfoot. It's a bloody Bigfoot.
It's a fucking squatch. But yeah, yeah, I've seen him in loads of stuff, and he pops up with his knowledge, and he's a bit of a talking head in these shows. Somebody's shared a story with him anyway. A man named Michael Anthony. He had his own run-in with whatever haunts the B3212. Michael worked for a big photocopier supplier, so he spent a lot of time on the road. And on the night of January the 16th, this is the 2008, he was driving home to Bristol after a long day visiting a customer in Postbridge. The deal was done and the paperwork was signed, and he was ready for a quiet drive home and some sleep. He had no idea he was about to experience something he'd never forget. Just after leaving Postbridge, Michael suddenly felt cold and clammy, and for no obvious reason, a wave of dread hit him, and he couldn't explain it. Normally, after days away from his wife and daughters, the drive home lifted his spirits, but that night the atmosphere inside the car felt heavy, almost hostile, and his hands went numb, and for a moment he genuinely thought he might be having a stroke. The truth turned out to be much stranger. Out of nowhere, a huge pair of hairy hands, or paws, as he described them, clamped down over his own hands on the steering wheel. Michael stared in horror as the disembodied hands tried to wrench the car off the road and out into the Dartmoor. They tried 3 separate times to force him off, and each time he fought back with everything he had. So did he see paws or hands there? That's not clear. But again, as usual, as suddenly as it started, they were gone. And in a flash of bright light that lit up the inside of the car, the only thing left behind was a strong smell of sulphur. Shaken and terrified, Michael put his foot down and didn't stop until he reached the service station on the M5. He suddenly felt cold and clammy. Now, I don't know about you, but out of nowhere, when the old DMV bug hits you, it is out of nowhere, and you suddenly wash over cold and clammy.
You do, but you don't always materialise a couple of horrible hands to spin you off the motorway.
Well, maybe that was just his backup story, because what he actually did was shit himself.
Maybe. It's a wild accusation to make if you shit your pants. So actually, no, mate. Don't worry about that shit on the seat. It was the hairy hands that did it.
Exactly.
Pull the other one, love. Got bells on.
So Kansas City Shuffle. If they're looking one way, you make them look the other way. So, yeah. Anyway, that's that's the end of all the encounters we've got of the hairy hands. What I'd like to share with you now is an old fairy tale slash story, which could be an origin of the hairy hands.
Ooh.
So it was a wet autumn evening on the cold and foggy moor. The ragged tin miners were sowing their steaming hot milk by the fire in the crumbling miner's cottage, just returned from their dank and filthy mines. Amongst those aged figures, a young man, naive and chatty, but good, who'd set out from a faraway place to seek his fortune. That day, he discovered some very rich quality ore and was set to be made wealthy from this find. And being overwhelmed with delight, he told the news to anyone who would listen. Quite ignorant that not all would wish him well. One stranger was listening very closely indeed, and he was a selfish and greedy man who stayed awake long after the fire had winked its last glow of light, plotting and scheming ways to get that poor young man's fortune. The next few days he pastured the young man, helping him dig his mine, stealing bits of ore and stowing them away in his secret pockets, because he just couldn't help himself. The naive young man, seeing only a poor and friendly fellow miner, let him help, despite he was stealing bits and putting them in his pocket. He just figured that's because he was poor. He turned a blind eye and he let him help, because he wasn't doing any harm, really. He did not suspect that something more sinister was about to unveil itself. On the 13th day, when the most of the ore had been mined and stored, the mean miner did his darkest deed and brought a rock down upon the poor young man's head, so hard that it killed him dead. With mock horror and grief, the mean miner told the fellow workers that he was dead. That poor young man. What a tragedy it had been. He later laid claim to the tin ore and squirmed in his sleep with greedy joy and selfish pride at his success. Although the poor young man was soon forgotten, the unrested and tormented soul, born with supernatural power, was out for revenge. On the 15th day, the mean miner took the tin ore to the market to be weighed and valued, but the vengeful spirit of the young man had cursed the stolen tin, and it was found to be such bad quality that a severe punishment was to be inflicted on the mean miner. Was because apparently if you tried to trade in some guff ore, you get screwed. Kind of like using counterfeit money, I suppose.
Yeah.
As punishment for his crimes, and to warn others of the consequences of presenting ore of poor quality, his hands were cut off and nailed to the opening of that dark mine, now tainted with murder. But that's not where the story ends. Long after he died, when the cosy old miners' cottages receded into dereliction from the decline of the mining trade, and motor cars came to wind their noisy way across the hills of Dartmoor, many strange and unexplained deaths have occurred nearby. Rumours have grown that grim, hairy hands grabbed the wheels of these cars, steering the drivers off the road to their tragic deaths. These incidents are perhaps too frequent to be mere accidents, but no one who sees these legendary hairy hands of evil ever lives to tell the tale. But don't worry yourself, it's only a story. Sleep.
Is it though?
Well, who knows?
Too many stories. Too many stories for it to not be true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, you take elements of the last few where it's going into bad energy of a place where something bad happened. More linking to your fairy tale story. I like the sound of that, where some thief's hands were just cut off and put on the front of somewhere, and then that bad energy comes from that. Then the spirit realm gets involved because of all the iron ore in the area, bringing the science. And what you got? You got some hairy hands that are set on killing humans to bring them over to the spirit realm, or, as we know spirit realm creatures to do, just feed on the fear. Now that's going to be some good, tasty, quality fear when you've got someone about to plunge to the death on a motorway. Whew, that's a spirit realm buffet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, well, the two most likely explanations we've got here,
Other than my one I just gave.
other than yours, the B3212 is an unlit, narrow road with hidden cambers and raised edges. The road can get very narrow in parts, and corners are hard to see. Grockles, who are unfamiliar with the road, drive too fast in the dark. A grockle being a non-local.
I thought it was a cryptid. I thought it was some Lumberwood shit.
It sounds like one, doesn't it? But no, apparently a grockle, if you're not from that area, you're an outsider. Bit like a muggle.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So yeah, grockles, just these city folk drive like they're on a motorway when they're not. They're on a very dangerous part of the road. And another one is the Devon cider can creep up on you. Now, I don't know how much of a cider drinker you are, but when you get down in cider country, like the southwest, where Dartmoor is, you can have a good 2 or 3 pints, and then about an hour later, your legs have other plans. So
Well,
it could be that these people are having a drink, feel all right to drive, and then it'll creep up on them. And then they
I've been to
start
a cider.
wobbling.
Maybe. I mean, I've been to a cider fest or two, and I've been hunched over a toilet throwing it up, but I've never felt any hairy hands.
Not even a pair of hairy, muscular hands rubbing your back or
Nope.
holding your hair back while you're throwing up, no?
Nope. The only hands I felt that night were my own pal, and that was when I got back. Well, no, out of all those scientific, in air brackets, explanations you just gave, none of them had any weight, mate. I think we know what we've got here. And we've got some genuine hairy hands because there's too many stories about something so wacky for it to not be true.
Okay.
Truth is in the quantity of the story, my friend. That's the way I go.
Fair enough. Well, that brings us to the end of our Hairy Hands episode.
Fair play, mate. Well, I enjoyed that one, and I look forward to catching you on the next. So, ding, ding.
Goodbye.